Fair housing law and practice, putting fair housing into practice. Throughout this course, we've explored the history of fair housing, the evolution of civil rights, the Realtor Code of Ethics, advertising compliance, tenant screening, and the importance of treating every consumer equally. Now it's time to bring those concepts together. Fair housing isn't just a federal law. It's something Arizona real estate professionals apply every day when showing homes, advertising properties, screening tenants, writing offers, negotiating contracts, and managing rental properties. Understanding the law is important. Applying it consistently is what protects both consumers and licensees. The purpose of the Fair Housing Act. The Fair Housing Act begins with a simple statement of national policy. It is the policy of the United States to provide, within constitutional limitations, for fair housing throughout the United States. That principle guides every housing transaction. The law prohibits discrimination in the sale, rental, financing, and advertising of housing because of a person's race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, national origin. These 7 federally protected classes remain the foundation of fair housing law today. Arizona's Fair Housing Act provides substantially the same protections while establishing Arizona's administrative enforcement procedures. What does the Fair Housing Act prohibit? The Fair Housing Act prohibits much more than simply refusing to sell or rent a home. Examples include refusing to negotiate, making housing unavailable, offering different terms or conditions, providing different services or facilities, publishing discriminatory advertisements, misrepresenting whether housing is available, blockbusting, or attempting to influence owners to sell because of the entry of protected classes into a neighborhood. Each of these actions may violate fair housing laws when based upon a protected characteristic. Fair housing applies throughout the transaction. Many people believe fair housing applies only when someone purchases or rents a home. In reality, it applies throughout the transaction. Advertising, property showings, finance, appraisals, property management, tenant screening, reasonable accommodations. Every stage of the housing process requires equal professional treatment. Disability protections. One of the most misunderstood areas of fair housing involves disability. The Fair Housing Act protects individuals who have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, have a record of such an impairment, or are regarded as having such an impairment. Housing providers may also be required to consider reasonable accommodations or reasonable modifications that allow individuals with disabilities equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling. These requests should always be evaluated individually and in accordance with fair housing requirements. Housing is not required in every situation. Fair housing laws provide broad protections, but they do not require housing providers to ignore legitimate safety concerns. Federal law recognizes that housing may be denied when an individual's tenancy would pose a direct threat to the health or safety of others, or would likely cause substantial physical damage to property. These decisions should always be based upon objective evidence, not assumptions or stereotypes. Arizona licensees have additional responsibilities. Arizona real estate professionals are responsible for complying with both fair housing laws and Arizona licensing laws. A violation of the Fair Housing Act may also expose a licensee to disciplinary action by the Arizona Department of Real Estate under Arizona license law. Professional conduct matters. Every transaction reflects not only on the individual licensee, but also on the brokerage and the real estate profession. Why this matters. Fair housing isn't about memorizing statutes. It's about ensuring every consumer has an equal opportunity to achieve the dream of home ownership or secure safe housing without unlawful discrimination. When Arizona licensees consistently apply fair housing principles, they help strengthen public confidence in the profession while reducing risk for themselves, their clients, and their brokerages. Broker tip: whenever you're uncertain whether a decision could involve a fair housing issue, stop and ask yourself one simple question. Would I make the same decision if this consumer belonged to a different protected class? If the answer is yes, because the decision is based on legitimate business reasons, you're likely on the right path. If you're unsure, consult your designated broker before proceeding. Online discussion question: why does the Fair Housing Act apply throughout an entire real estate transaction rather than only at closing? Answer: because discrimination can occur during advertising, financing, property showings, tenant screening, negotiations, or other housing-related activities. Equal treatment is required throughout the transaction. Question: why should housing decisions always be based on objective facts rather than assumptions? Answer: fair housing laws prohibit decisions based on stereotypes or protected characteristics. Objective business criteria help ensure equal treatment for all consumers. Question: how does fair housing compliance protect both consumers and licensees? Consumers receive equal access to housing opportunities, while licensees reduce the risk of complaints, investigations, and disciplinary action by consistently following fair housing laws.